Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, September 23, 1980. Stanley Theater. Bob Marley just finished what nobody knew would be his final concert ever. Sweat dripping down his face, barely able to stand after 2 hours on stage, he walked backstage and grabbed his closest friend by the arm. Alan Skill Cole, his childhood friend from Trenchtown, the man who'd been by his side for over 20 years. Bob's grip was tight, desperate. "I need to tell you something," Bob whispered, looking around to make sure no one else could hear. "Something I've been carrying for too long. If something happens to me, you need to know this." Skill tried to laugh it off. "Bob, nothing's gonna happen to you. You just need rest." But Bob's eyes were different that night. Haunted. Like he knew something no one else did. "Listen to me," he said, pulling Skill closer. "What I'm about to tell you, it's about why they really shot me in '76, the real reason, and it's bigger than anyone knows." Then he whispered something that would haunt Skill for the rest of his life. That night started 6 hours earlier, September 23, 1980. 6 p.m., backstage at the Stanley Theater. Bob was getting ready for the show. The Uprising tour was almost over. Just this show in Pittsburgh, then a couple more dates, then rest. Bob needed rest. The cancer was spreading. Everyone could see it. Skill watched his friend move slowly around the dressing room. Bob kept checking his watch, looking at the door. "You all right, Bob?" Bob nodded but didn't speak. His mind was somewhere else. Bob had been having nightmares about December 3, 1976, the night gunmen stormed his house in Kingston, the night they tried to kill him. Bob survived. Bullets grazed his chest and arm, but the questions never stopped. Who ordered it? Why? The official story said political violence, but Bob never believed it. Then last year in London, Bob met a journalist investigating CIA operations in the Caribbean. This journalist showed Bob documents, photos, proof that the shooting wasn't random. It was planned. 2 weeks after their meeting, the journalist died. Car accident. Bob didn't believe in coincidences, and tonight something felt wrong, like the past was catching up. PM. Showtime. The Stanley Theater was packed, 3,000 people filling every seat. The energy was incredible. Everyone knew this tour was special, maybe one of the last chances to see Bob Marley live. Bob walked on stage to thunderous applause. The lights hit him, and for a moment, everything else disappeared. This was where he belonged. He opened with "Natural Mystic." His voice was strong despite the cancer eating away at his body. The crowd sang along, 3,000 voices united. Bob looked out at the sea of faces and felt something shift inside him. These people didn't know this might be the last time. Didn't know about the cancer spreading through his brain. Didn't know about the threats, the fear, the certainty that his time was almost up. But they felt something. He could see it in their eyes, the way they moved, the way they sang. Like they were trying to hold on to this moment. Like they knew deep down that something was ending. Bob scanned the crowd as he sang, always looking, always aware, a habit he'd developed since the shooting. You never knew who might be out there, who might be watching, who might be waiting. The show flowed beautifully. Then belly full, rebel music, "I Shot the Sheriff." Each song carried his message of freedom and unity. Each note felt like it might be his last. Between songs, Bob would close his eyes and let the music wash over him. Let it remind him why he'd started this journey, why he'd kept going even when everything hurt. Even when the cancer made every movement agony, even when fear told him to stop, to hide, to stay quiet. But he couldn't stay quiet. That wasn't who Bob Marley was. That wasn't what his music was about. So he sang. He performed. He gave everything he had left. During No Woman, No Cry, Bob closed his eyes and let the music take him back. Back to Trenchtown. Back to the beginning. Back to when everything was simpler and the only thing that mattered was the music. He thought about his mother. about growing up poor in Jamaica, about the struggles and the dreams and the impossible journey that had led him here, to this stage, to this moment, to 3,000 people singing his words back to him. The crowd swayed together, lighters held high, creating a sea of flickering flames. Bob looked out at them and felt something break inside. Love, gratitude, and a deep sadness that this might be goodbye. He wanted to tell them, wanted to say thank you, wanted to explain how much their support had meant, how their love had carried him through the darkest times, how knowing his music touched their lives made everything worth it. But the words wouldn't come, so he just sang. Let the music say what his voice couldn't. Then halfway through the set, something changed. Bob was singing "Get Up, Stand Up" when he saw movement in the crowd. Someone pushing through, coming closer to the stage. Bob kept singing, but his attention was divided now, watching this figure move through the crowd, getting closer with each step. Something about the way this person moved made Bob's skin crawl, purposeful, determined, like a shark cutting through water. The person broke through to the front and stood there at the edge of the stage. The stage lights illuminated his face clearly, middle-aged, white, cold eyes staring up at Bob without blinking. Bob's voice caught just for a second, but he recovered and kept singing because he knew that face, knew it from Kingston. December 3rd, 1976. This man had been there, not one of the shooters, but there, watching from a car across the street, making sure it happened. Bob had seen him for just a moment before the bullets started flying. A glimpse through a window, a face he'd never forgotten, and now that face was here, in Pittsburgh, staring up at him. Bob's heart was pounding. His hands were shaking, but he kept performing. Couldn't show fear. Couldn't let this man see that he'd gotten to him. Couldn't let the crowd know something was wrong. The man just stood there, perfectly still while everyone around him danced and sang. Just watching Bob with those cold, dead eyes, like a predator studying prey, like he was measuring Bob, calculating, deciding. Bob wanted to run, wanted to scream, wanted to point at this man and tell everyone what he'd done. But he couldn't, because who would believe him? And what proof did he have? Just a face remembered from 4 years ago. Just a feeling in his gut that this man meant death. So Bob did the only thing he could. He kept singing, kept performing, kept spreading his message of resistance and freedom. If this man was here to threaten him, to remind him to stay quiet, then Bob would show him it wouldn't work. Would show him that some voices can't be silenced. The man's expression never changed. No smile, no frown. Just those dead eyes watching, waiting. And then, as suddenly as he appeared, the man turned and disappeared back into the crowd. Gone, like a ghost. Bob's bandmates noticed the change in him, the way his voice had faltered, the way his hands were shaking. During the break between songs, his keyboard player leaned over. "You okay, Bob?" Bob nodded. "Yeah, just tired." But he wasn't okay. His mind was racing. What was that man doing here? Was it a warning, a threat, or just a reminder that they were still watching, that they knew where he was, what he was doing, what he knew? Bob forced himself to focus on the music, to finish the show, but part of him was calculating, wondering if he'd see tomorrow, wondering if that man was waiting outside, wondering if this really was his final concert. During Redemption Song, Bob's voice cracked with emotion. Tears streamed down his face as he sang. The crowd thought it was passion. Skill, watching from backstage, knew something had happened out there, something bad. "Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery," Bob sang, his voice breaking. "None but ourselves can free our minds." He sang those words directly to where the man had been standing, a defiant message. They could threaten him, they could kill him, but they couldn't silence his message, couldn't erase what he'd created, couldn't stop the movement he'd started. The final song was Exodus. Bob gave it everything. Every ounce of energy. Every bit of soul. Like he was pouring his entire life into those final notes. Like he knew this might really be the end. When the show ended, 3,000 people erupted, screaming, applauding, begging for more. But Bob was done. He waved to the crowd one last time, his arm barely able to lift, and walked off stage. His bandmates had to support him. He could barely walk. His legs were shaking. His whole body felt like it was shutting down. Backstage, Bob collapsed into a chair, his whole body shaking. Not from exhaustion, from fear, from the certainty that his time was running out. From the knowledge that they were closing in, people came and went, congratulating him, saying goodbye, making plans for future shows that Bob knew would never happen. Finally, the room cleared. Just Bob and Skill remained. Bob sat there for a long moment, staring at nothing. Skill could see his friend's mind working, processing, deciding something. Then Bob stood up slowly, walked to the door, checked the hallway, then locked it. Skill, Bob said quietly, I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you a long time ago. Skill could see the fear in his friend's eyes. Real fear, the kind that makes your blood run cold. What is it, Bob? Bob walked over and grabbed Skill's arm. His grip was desperate. What I'm about to tell you, you can't repeat it to anyone. Not yet, not until I'm gone. You understand? Bob, you're scaring me. What's going on? Bob's voice dropped to barely a whisper. You remember December 3rd, 1976? The night they shot me? Of course. That wasn't political. Not in the way they said. Bob's eyes were dark. It was the CIA. Skill stared at his friend. The CIA? Bob, I know how it sounds. But I met someone in London. A journalist. He had proof, documents, photos. The CIA was running operations in Jamaica, trying to control the elections, and I was getting in the way. Bob's hands were shaking. My music was spreading ideas about freedom, real change, unity. They couldn't have that. Jamaica was too strategic. Cuba was right there. They needed Jamaica stable and under control. And here I was singing about revolution, about breaking chains, about people taking power for themselves. So they tried to scare me, to shut me up. And it worked. I left Jamaica for over a year. Skill's mind was reeling. How do you know all this? The journalist. His name was Michael. He'd been investigating CIA operations all over the Caribbean, Guatemala, Chile, Jamaica. He showed me files, internal memos, photos of agents who'd been in Kingston. Bob's jaw clenched. And one of those photos was from December 3rd, outside my house. A man in a car, watching. That's how I knew. That's how I knew it wasn't just political violence. It was planned, orchestrated. They wanted me scared. They wanted me gone. Bob sat down heavily. 2 weeks after Michael showed me this, he died. Car accident. Convenient timing, right? They killed him? I don't know for sure. But I know he was scared those last few days. Said people were following him. Said his phone was tapped. Then suddenly he's dead and all his research disappears. Skill felt sick. And now they're coming for you? Tonight, during the show. I saw him, Skill, the man from the photo. The man who was outside my house in Kingston. He was here, in the crowd, standing right at the front of the stage. Bob's whole body was trembling. I saw his face up close under the lights. Same face, same cold eyes. No doubt about it. He wanted me to see him. Wanted me to know they're still watching. Bob, we need to go to the police. We need protection. No. Bob's voice was firm. The police can't help. This goes too high up, too deep. The CIA has connections everywhere. The police. The government. Who do I call? Who do I trust? He stood and started pacing. And there's something else. The cancer. It's spreading too fast. The doctors don't understand it. They say melanoma doesn't usually progress like this. That something's wrong. Bob stopped and looked directly at Skill. What if it's not natural? What if they found a way to make me sick? To kill me slowly so it looks like disease instead of murder? Bob, that's impossible. They can't just give someone cancer, can't they? Bob's voice was bitter. We're talking about the CIA, Skill. The people who overthrew governments. Who ran experiments on their own citizens without their knowledge. Who've assassinated leaders all over the world. You think giving someone cancer is beyond them? Bob's voice dropped to barely audible. Michael told me they'd been researching ways to induce cancer, to make it look natural. He had documents about it, programs with code names I can't even remember. Skill felt like the room was spinning. It sounded insane. But looking at Bob's face, seeing the absolute certainty there, the fear, the resignation, maybe it wasn't so crazy after all. Why are you telling me all this now? Bob walked over and put his hands on Skill's shoulders. Because I saw that man tonight, and I know what it means. They're reminding me they're still there, still watching. And if I talk, if I tell anyone what I know, they'll finish what they started in Kingston. His eyes were wet with tears. I'm dying, Skill. The cancer's in my brain now. I've got months at most, maybe weeks, and I need someone to know what really happened. Someone who'll tell the truth after I'm gone. Promise me you'll wait a few years. Let things cool down. Let them think the secret died with me. Then tell the story. Tell people what really happened. Don't let them bury the truth with my body. I promise. Skill's voice was shaking. Tears were running down his face. Bob pulled his friend into a tight hug. They held each other for a long moment. Both of them knowing this might be goodbye. Both of them knowing Bob's time was running out. Both of them carrying the weight of this terrible secret. When they finally pulled apart, Bob managed a weak smile. Thank you, Skill, for everything. For being there. For believing me. For keeping this secret. For being my brother through all of this. He wiped his eyes. Let's get out of here. I need some air. And I want to see the night sky. Just in case I don't get many more chances. They left the Stanley Theater together that night. Bob leaned on Skill's shoulder as they walked. Two old friends from Trenchtown. Two brothers who'd been through everything together. Now carrying a secret that could get them both killed. Neither of them slept that night. Bob lay in his hotel room staring at the ceiling, wondering if he'd see another sunrise. Skill sat in his room replaying that conversation, trying to process what Bob had told him, trying to decide if his friend was paranoid or if the danger was real. By morning, Skill knew the danger was real, because he'd seen the fear in Bob's eyes. And BobMarley wasn't afraid of much. September 26, 1980. Central Park, New York City. 3 days after the Pittsburgh concert, Bob was in New York for what was supposed to be a short rest before continuing the tour. He'd decided to go for a jog despite feeling weak. The doctors had told him to rest, but Bob couldn't sit still. Couldn't stop moving. Like if he kept moving, death couldn't catch him. It was a beautiful morning. Clear sky, cool air. The park was quiet. Bob jogged slowly, his body protesting with every step. But he kept going, kept pushing, kept fighting. He was running along a path near the lake when it happened. His vision blurred. His legs turned to rubber. The world tilted sideways. Bob collapsed. Hit the ground hard. Couldn't get up. Couldn't move. His brain was shutting down. The cancer had spread too far. Too fast. People rushed to help. Someone called an ambulance. Bob lay there on the path, conscious but unable to speak. Unable to tell them what was happening. Unable to say goodbye. At the hospital, the doctors delivered the news. The cancer had spread to his brain, aggressively, faster than they'd ever seen. BobMarley was dying. Bob fought for 8 more months, tried every treatment, traveled to Germany for experimental therapy, tried holistic medicine, tried prayer, tried everything, but nothing worked. The cancer kept spreading, eating away at his brain, at his body, at his time. Through it all, Bob never told anyone else what he'd told Skill that night in Pittsburgh. Kept the secret, stayed quiet, maybe because he was scared, maybe because he knew it wouldn't matter anyway. He was dying, and dead men tell no tales. On May 11, 1981, in a hospital room in Miami, BobMarley took his last breath. His family was there, his wife, his children, Skill, all of them watching the legend slip away. Bob was 36 years old. Skill kept his promise. Stayed quiet, for years, for decades. Carried that secret like a weight that got heavier with each passing day. But he also started looking, quietly, carefully, trying to find proof. Trying to track down Michael's research, trying to find the documents Bob had mentioned. It took years, decades, but slowly Skill pieced it together. Found people who'd worked with Michael, found copies of some of the documents, found evidence of CIA operations in Jamaica during the 1970s. He learned about COINTELPRO, about the FBI and CIA's programs to neutralize political activists, about the lengths they'd go to silence voices they considered dangerous. He learned that Bob Marley had been on their radar, that his influence in Jamaica and around the world had made him a target, that his message of freedom and unity was seen as a threat to American interests in the Caribbean. But could Skill prove the shooting was ordered by the CIA? Could he prove the cancer was induced? No, not definitively. The evidence was circumstantial, suggestive, but not conclusive. 30 years after that night in Pittsburgh, Skill finally told the story. Published a book. Laid it all out. The conversation backstage. Bob's fears. The man in the crowd. The suspicions about the cancer. The book caused a firestorm. Some people believed. Started their own investigations. Found their own connections. Others dismissed it as conspiracy theory. Said Skill was exploiting Bob's death for profit. Said there was no proof and they were right. There was no smoking gun. No confession. No document that said we killed Bob Marley. Just a series of suspicious connections. A pattern of behavior. A history of CIA operations targeting influential figures. But for those who knew Bob, who saw the fear in his eyes that night, who understood what his music represented and why it threatened powerful people, they didn't need absolute proof. They already knew. September 23, 1980. That night in Pittsburgh changed everything. Bob Marley whispered a secret that's still echoing today. A truth about power and what happens when you challenge it. His final concert wasn't just a performance. It was a testimony. And even though Bob died 8 months later, what he told Skill that night didn't die with him. It spread, it grew. It became the question that won't go away. Because Bob's message was always about freedom, about speaking truth to power, about refusing to be silenced. And you can't silence someone whose message matters that much. Bob's gone. But his voice? That's never leaving. And the questions he raised? Those are just getting louder. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. More Bob Marley stories will be uploaded to the channel soon. If you love Bob Marley, don't forget to leave a heart in the comments.